You wake up every Monday with a weight in your stomach. Another week of work. You think while you gulp your coffee. That morning ritual is the visible symptom of a deeper program. I have seen it enough times to name it. This is the ritual of a particular mind. A mind that believes, deep down, it was born to work until it dies. Not to live, not to prosper, to grind and survive. They call it responsibility. I call it a programming error. What I will do in this video is not offer cheerleading. I will map the psychology behind this self-imposed sentence. I will show how your mind rejects prosperity and equates value with sacrifice. I will expose the slow mechanism that turns daily sweat into a life of perpetual just enough. Most important, I will give a first practical step you can apply. Not a slogan, not a flimsy pep talk. A concrete ritual to begin breaking the loop. Because this mind rejects abundance as impossible for me. It must be interrupted. Ask yourself quietly now, did you choose this destiny, or did you inherit it, and then keep voting for it? I will follow that question. I will start by dissecting the person who believes they were born to work until they die. Then I will show the shapes this person takes. Finally, I will reveal the invisible law that enforces the pattern. If you stayed for this far, be honest with me. Are you one of these people who unconsciously chose perpetual work as a life sentence? The moment you feel that recognition, you are ready to go deeper. In the next section, I will do a full X-ray of this type of mind, layer by layer. Prepare to be seen. That morning scene is simple, but it reveals a pattern. I see it as a clinician would read an old wound. The coffee is hot and rushed. The eyes are not. The body is ready. The life behind it is resigned. That resignation becomes a default operating system. People who believe they are meant to work until they die tend to call themselves realistic. They like that label. It makes their sacrifice sound noble. They contrast themselves with dreamers who talk about abundance. They claim to be mature, grounded, sensible. I hear the word responsibility often in their vocabulary. Responsibility is their shield. But what they preach to others is not the same as what they whisper to themselves. Publicly, they say, I accept the limits of life. I know how the world works. Privately, they repeat a different script. I must earn my place through suffering. That private script is short and ruthless. It determines the small daily choices. It decides which opportunities get refused. It decides how money is handled when it appears. Let me be blunt. Their self-image has layers. The top layer is pride. I am realistic. Under that sits fear. If I relax, I will lose control. Under fear sits a memory. Maybe childhood. Maybe a family story that equates worth with labor. That memory becomes a moral argument. Prosperity without pain is labeled as suspicious. The mind says, if it is easy, it must be wrong. So they grind. They work extra, not because the job demands it, but because their identity demands it. When money arrives, it does not open relief. It creates new levers of obligation. A raise becomes a reason to take on more. A bonus becomes a new debt. The relief is temporary. The structure of life resets to the old baseline. The belief survived another test. This is not accidental. It is a coherent system. A one-sentence belief produces a cascade of emotions. Those emotions guide decisions. Decisions shape habits. Habits create reality. Reality then proves the belief true. The loop closes. Now watch how this pattern looks in the real world. I will show quick scenes you likely recognize. Scene 1. A promotion knocks at the door. The job promises 40% more pay and new responsibilities. The immediate thought is, I'm not ready. Then comes the image of exposure. What if I fail? Anxiety rises. The person declines politely. They choose to prepare instead. Years pass. The promotion offers end. I wasn't ready becomes proof the universe is harsh. The script wins again. Scene 2. An extra income appears. A side project surfaces. The first reaction is risk. I might lose everything. The person begins to research endlessly. Research becomes avoidance. The opportunity fades while the person is still studying the manual. Later they call themselves prudent. The reality says they avoided change. Scene 3. Money arrives as an unexpected payment. The first impulse is to extinguish obligations. That is sensible. But seconds later, a new obligation appears in the mind. A relative needs help. A home repair. A deserved expense. The person spends the windfall to repair the routine. The baseline increases. Now the person must work more to maintain the new baseline. It feels inevitable. Each scene is small. Each choice is plausible. Each result reinforces the identity. That is how a life becomes a sentence. It happens through mundane decisions, not dramatic errors. I call this the realist paradox. They believe they are protecting themselves from risk. Instead, they protect a poverty script. They wear realism like armor. But armor comes at a cost. It limits movement. It stops the flow. There is another layer to inspect. How do they speak about money out loud? Often the discourse is moral. They label wealthy people as lucky or corrupt or excessive. They deny envy, but they feel it. They say things like, money changes people. They use this as moral distance. It justifies not trying for more. It preserves identity. But listen to their private narration. It sounds different. If I get too much, I will lose who I am. I do not want to be that person. These sentences are protective. They protect a fragile moral self. That moral self clings to struggle because struggle is proof of integrity. Now the contrast. Nature is abundant. The markets are complex and full of winners and losers. Many people prosper without living as martyrs. The person who believes in destiny of work refuses to see that. They tell themselves abundance is for others. This belief is not only a personal story. It becomes a filter. It picks which facts enter the mind and which do not. When someone like this meets a success story, they do not see data. They see threat. They either dismiss the story as anomaly or explain it with moral language. They must have cut corners. Or they had help. That mental move protects the identity again. At this point you might ask, is this merely fear or is it a moral choice? It is both. Fear dresses as morality. You can call it prudence. You can call it ethics. But underneath is a decision to trade presence and possibility for a predictable script. Let us pause and ask some direct questions. Where did this script form? For many, it is handed down. For others, it is earned through trauma. For some, it is a choice made in adolescence to feel safe. The pattern is social. It spreads in families and regions. I have seen it in families where several generations worked long hours and never saw the payoff. The children internalized the story. They became carriers. Listen to the small phrases they use. They say hard work like a mantra. They cling to virtues of struggle. They laugh at get-rich-quick stories. They call abundance talk naive. Yet their finances tell another story. Cycles of just work, never wealth. That mismatch is crucial. It signals that identity and reality are out of alignment. I want to be precise about this mismatch. Identity is a signal to the world. If you believe you are someone who works until they die, your choices telegraph that. The world matches your signal. That's the hard truth. The universe is not punishing. It is mirroring what you broadcast. Your internal identity organizes your external life. Now, this is not fatalism. It is diagnosis. The crucial point is, identity is changeable, but it is changed slowly. Not by pep talks, not by wishful thinking, by small, consistent interruptions of the pattern. Before I show the interruptions, I must map the inner varieties of this tribe. Not everyone wears the same mask. They divide into subtypes. Each subtype has a different danger. Each requires a different nudge to wake up. In the next section, I will describe those subtypes in detail. I will give you a day in life for each. You will see yourself or someone you love. Then we will see how the invisible law behind the pattern operates. But before that, a simple request. If this analysis is landing for you, please help this channel grow to 1,000 subscribers. Leave a comment with your city and country. It helps me keep making content like this. Thank you. Now, love was tied to service. A typical day for the heir begins early. They wake before sunrise. They take on the hardest tasks at work. They volunteer for extra shifts. They say yes to family demands. At dinner, they do not talk about rest. They speak about obligation. When money arrives, the heir spends first on duty. Home repairs, medical needs of relatives, last-minute family expenses. Saving becomes secondary. The heir tells themselves the story of honor and duty. The real story is fear. If I stop, who will carry the line? The core belief of the heir is moral. Prosperity without pain is suspect. If you are comfortable, you are privileged in a negative way. The heir feels guilt at the thought of ease. This guilt operates like a governor. It reduces appetite for investment. It punishes dreams. Life for the heir becomes a long ledger of owed debts. Even when they have money, they feel poor. Consequences are concrete. Relationships become transactional. Children see a parent who is present by logistics, not by presence. Health degrades slowly. Retirement appears as a distant, unlikely myth. The heir often says, "I would work less if the family did not need it." They are sincere, but the pattern builds new duties as soon as some duties end. The heir inherits responsibilities like a family heirloom. If you recognize this in your mirror, know one thing. This is not virtue without cost. It is a value system that became a cage. You can honor your past and refuse its fatalism at the same time. That is the first fragile possibility. The second phase is the abundance rejector. This one is subtler and more insidious. They are experts in sabotage. When a real opportunity arrives, they find reasons to block it. Not now, they say. I will prepare more. And then they never launch. The abundance rejector is a perfectionist disguised as prudence. A day in the life of the abundance rejector looks rational. They research investments for months. They take courses that multiply slowly. They talk about strategy, but action is scarce. When a client offers a higher fee, they undercharge out of fear of losing them. When a business could scale, they worry about complexity and stay small. Their inner voice whispers, "You are not ready." That voice is trained by attachment to safety. The belief of the abundance rejector is identity poor. They think they are unworthy. They avoid risk because risk requires a self that can recover from mistakes. The abundance rejector doubts that self. So the default is to keep things minimally manageable. They avoid the fear of failure by never letting themselves be tested. Consequences are stealthy. They watch others grow and call it luck. They lose time in learning loops. They feel embarrassed speaking about their small income compared to their knowledge. This creates shame. The shame yields more silence. The person disappears into not yet. If you see this pattern, the remedy is not knowledge. It is permission. Permission to be imperfect in public. Permission to price your worth. Permission to test. Third, the busy martyr. This subtype wears exhaustion as a badge. They boast about 12-hour days. They measure value by busyness. In meetings they say, "I'm swamped," as if it confers righteousness. They rarely delegate. They believe no one can do their work as well as they can. Control and value fuse. A day with a busy martyr is crowded. Mornings filled with client calls. Afternoon consumed by operational firefights. Nights spent answering messages. Weekends sacrificed to catch up. They love being needed. They interpret rest as laziness. Their inner belief equates worth with utility. Less output equals less value. Consequences are immediate. Burnout is normal. Relationships become surface level. The martyr is always present with one foot out the door. Delegation is seen as a moral failure. Money is a trophy that shows sacrifice, not freedom. When they finally stop, they feel guilty. They cannot enjoy the rest because the identity screams it is undeserved. If you are the martyr, the hardest task is to learn to trust others. Delegation is a discipline, not a loss. It tests your self-worth apart from your output. The paradox is that your effectiveness can increase as your busyness decreases. But belief resists paradox. Fourth, the eternal planner. This one is patient in an unhealthy way. When I retire, they say, when the debts are gone. Life is always postponed. The eternal planner is excellent at saving, but terrible at living now. Their calendar is a promise to a future self who may never arrive. A normal day for the planner is full of later decisions. They delay a vacation. They postpone a difficult conversation. They tell themselves, I will live when the conditions are perfect. That condition rarely appears. The planner's belief is temporal. The good life is always in the future. Today is a pit stop. Consequences are corrosive. Children grow up without a parent who plays. Health declines because preventive care keeps getting postponed. When a crisis arrives, the planner feels cheated, as if the future failed them. Often they end up older with assets, but no sense of how to spend life as they once imagined. If you notice yourself in the planner, the antidote is presence practice. Choose one thing you will not postpone. Make it non-negotiable. That small act recalibrates the internal clock. Now, these types are not isolated. Most people carry pieces of more than one. You can be an heir who also plans excessively. You can be an abundance rejecter who behaves like a martyr in public. The important insight is this: different masks protect the same fear. They all speak the same sentence in distinct dialects. Let me give you two short stories to illustrate real shifts. The first is Maria. She was an heir of burden. She ran a small family restaurant and worked every shift. When business offered more profit, she expanded staff but kept her schedule the same. She believed only she could maintain quality. I challenged her to hire a manager and keep one guaranteed day off weekly. She resisted for months. Then a health scare forced the change. She saw the manager run things capably. The business grew. Maria rediscovered time with her children. Her identity did not disappear. It softened. The family narrative shifted. She stopped being the only caretaker of the legacy. That shift did not happen with grand design. It began with one guarded experiment and a rule she kept. The second story is Daniel. He was an abundance rejecter. He took courses for 2 years and never launched his online course. He convinced himself he needed more credentials. I asked him to launch a simple pilot course priced modestly. He balked, then agreed with conditions. He failed on the first run. He learned, rewired, and relaunched. Within a year, he was making 3 times his old freelance income. The failure taught him recovery. The success taught him permission to charge his worth. Both stories show a pattern. Small, painful experiments break the loop. The mind learns new evidence. New evidence rewires identity slowly. This is not quick. It is gradual and real. Now a clinical point. Each subtype speaks a root belief. The heir believes prosperity is theft. The rejecter believes she is unworthy. The martyr believes worth equals output. The planner believes life is later. These beliefs are not facts. They are stories. Stories can be rewritten, but there is resistance. The mind prefers familiar misery over unknown freedom. Comfort with a known problem feels safer than the risk of unknown possibility. You must expect friction. Your social environment will test your new behavior. Collateral voices will say you are selfish, irresponsible, naive. Those voices are often the old scripts echoing. So how do you start to change inside each subtype? Here are short, concrete pivots you can test today. If you are the heir, begin to reframe duty. Ask, what is the smallest act of generosity that does not bankrupt my future? Practice saying no with compassion. Set a family budget that honorably limits emergencies. Make a ritual of transferring a small percentage of your income to a future fund before any other needs are paid. This interrupts the endless duty treadmill. If you are the abundance rejecter, start with small public failures. Launch a pilot. Price it fairly. Track results, not meanings. Reward the act, not the outcome. Build evidence that you can fail and recover. That evidence dissolves unworthiness. If you are the busy martyr, schedule guardrails. Block time for deep work and for spouse, and enforce them. Delegate one task this week. Practice being replaced and watching the world continue. Learn that your value is not always. In the next part, one will show how this inner sentence becomes a law that the world obeys. I will call it the law of identity manifested. I will explain, step by step, how thought, emotion, and choice knit the reality you live. You must hear that law if you want to change your outcomes. The law is not mystical. It is mechanical. And when you understand it, you can reverse engineer your life. Which subtype resonates with you most? Which one did you resist seeing? Keep that image in mind. We will use it as the lever to pry open the law behind the pattern. I call it the law of identity manifested. That name sounds grand, but the mechanism is simple and brutal. Your inner sentence, the one you repeat without much drama, becomes the operating system of your life. It is not a slogan. It is a command that organizes attention, emotion, and choice. You can feel the law at work when someone tells you they are just a working person, as if that were a destiny rather than a description. That phrase is not neutral. It is a broadcast. The mind hears it and rearranges priorities to match. Small decisions follow automatically. Those decisions pile up. Reality reshapes itself around the voice you keep telling. The pathway is mechanical. First, you accept a statement about yourself. Then that statement produces an emotional tone: resignation, guilt, righteous pride. Those emotions bias perception. You notice threats where others see opportunity. You notice obligations where others see freedom. Perception guides action. Actions become habits. Habits attract circumstances that confirm the original statement. The loop closes. The law is not mystical. It is feedback. Think of identity like a radio frequency. If you tune to, "I must work until I die," the world responds with stations that match. Opportunities arrive, but you interpret them as traps. Money appears, and you feel compelled to redistribute it into duties. Offers that would free time are translated into new chains. The universe is not punishing you. It is aligning events with the energy you habitually emit. You will tell me that is metaphysical language. Fine. Now translate it to the concrete. When a promotion arrives, what happens in the brain is predictable. The thought, "I might fail," lights up circuits tied to self-protection. Adrenaline spikes. You look for reasons to decline. You call it prudence. You call it realism. You say you'll prepare. Preparation becomes indefinite. The promotion vanishes. The neural pattern gets rewarded. Refusing risk reduced anxiety in the short term, and the truth of your identity was reinforced in the long term. The law just scored another point. Here is an image you can hold: identity as a lens. The lens is carved by stories from childhood, by family idioms, by the small traumas we treat as facts. That lens filters incoming information. Two people can read the same market report and draw opposite conclusions. One sees potential. The other sees volatility and danger. The difference is not intelligence. It is the lens. The law of identity manifested says, your lens writes your life. Let's make it clinical. The brain prefers predictability. Familiar misery is less threatening than unfamiliar possibility. So when an idea like prosperity must come with pain is internalized, the brain builds scaffolding to protect that idea. It allocates attention to confirmatory evidence. It builds habits that produce confirming outcomes. The environment replies in kind. Economists call this self-fulfilling feedback in markets. I call it the universe acting like a mirror. This law explains an otherwise strange fact. Hardworking people who resent wealth often sabotage their own gains without conscious intent. They are not against money per se. They are protecting an identity that attached moral value to toil. To change a life, you do not primarily change behavior. You change the identity that organizes behavior. That is the core of the law. Now watch how the law operates across 3 domains. First, in perception. When an abundant story appears in your feed, you do not see a model. You see a threat. Your brain asks, what did they do wrong? That question neutralizes curiosity. It preserves self-image. Second, in allocation. Money arrives and duty rises to meet it. The extra becomes a new baseline. Your ledger reorganizes. Third, in relationship. Your status as the sacrificial one becomes a social currency. Family and colleagues learn to extract that currency. They mirror back the identity you show them. Here is a small experiment I use with clients. Say aloud the sentence you most often believe about work and money. I ask them to notice the physical response. Most will tighten. Most will justify. Most will show a momentary drop in possibility. The sentence is an anchor. The body follows. The law is not airy. It is embodied. You can also see the law in timing. The person who always delays pleasure is not meeting external obstacles. They are obeying a temporal identity. Life is later becomes a scheduling algorithm. Vacations, conversations, medical checkups are put on hold because the internal calendar insists on perfect conditions that rarely arrive. The law of identity manifested converts a belief about time into missed months and years. There is a structural element too. Identity communicates through thresholds. If you believe you must struggle, small successes will trigger a defensive reflex. A raise will invite new obligations. A windfall will attract an immediate expense. The threshold for choosing ease remains high. The system resets to equilibrium because the identity signal is still the strongest broadcast in your field. This is where the law meets social dynamics. Identities are not solitary. Families and peer groups learn to read your frequency. They adjust their behavior to you. A spouse who sees you as the reliable martyr will not immediately encourage you to rest. A parent who learned to value sacrifice will praise your endurance. Your social environment becomes a rehearsal space for the identity you are practicing. You might ask, what about structural injustice, bad bosses, systemic risk? They matter. The law does not deny hard realities. Rather, it explains how people with similar external constraints can produce different outcomes. Two workers in the same factory will respond differently to the same layoffs, depending on what they believe they deserve. The law clarifies variance where mere circumstance would suggest uniformity. The law has moral implications, so I say this bluntly. Identity is a responsibility. When you tell the world, I must grind forever, you are not merely naming a tough ethic. You are selecting a reality for yourself. That selection has costs. Health, relationships, time, and potential compound as losses. The law does not judge. It simply mirrors. Now, before we move forward, examine one more mechanism. Confirmation bias turned into life architecture. When you act from a dominant identity for years, you create a track record. That track record becomes proof. Proof justifies the belief. The belief persists. The loop tightens. This is why rational argument rarely cracks deep identities. Evidence is reinterpreted. A bonus will be called temporary or dangerous, and the person will return to the known script. The law is efficient at preserving itself. If this description lands for you, note a simple consequence. Changing outcomes requires changing the signal. Small behavioral tweaks will help, but they are slow if the underlying identity remains the same. The real leverage is identity revision, adopting a new inner sentence and backing it with repeated actions until the environment reshapes in response. I will now show the law in motion. I will map the exact cycle people fall into when an opportunity arrives. You will see the same law operating as a self-protective machine. Once you can identify each step, you can disrupt it. The next part will take that mechanical loop apart, moment by moment, and show you where to interrupt it. Keep watching. The pattern is predictable and it is reparable. What does the loop look like in a real life? That is the next question I will answer. The cycle is simple because human brains are conservative. When an opportunity appears, the same pattern repeats. Thought, emotion, action, outcome, interpretation, reinforcement. I call it the auto-sabotage loop. It moves fast. Often you do not notice until years have passed, and the same regrets appear on repeat. Picture a promotion. The first thing that comes is a thought. I'm not ready. That thought is thin. It masquerades as prudence, but it is loaded. It triggers a low-grade panic. Your body prepares for social pain. In that moment you choose. You can say, Step 2, emotional activation, a bodily tone that favors protection. Step 3, meaning making. You reframe the event into a story that supports the thought. Step 4, defensive action. You avoid, delay, underreact, or overcompensate. Step 5, outcome that matches the belief. Step 6, retrospective evidence. You explain the result in ways that cement the original thought. I see this in clinics every week. A client gets an offer to consult at a higher rate. Immediately they underprice. I don't want to scare clients away. Months later they complain about low income. They point to market realities as proof. They do not see the thread between their initial underpricing and the current revenue. That is the feedback loop in practice. Let me give you 3 concrete scenes, because abstraction hides the cruelty of the pattern. Scene 1. The bonus arrives. She immediately pays an overdue bill. That is sensible. Then a neighbor mentions a need. She gives some. An old friend asks for help. She helps. By the time the month ends, the bonus is spent. She feels generous, then resentful. She says, I never get ahead. That sentence circulates internally and prepares the mind for the next scarcity. The loop latches. Scene 2. A course could launch now. He delays because the market isn't perfect. He waits for a quieter month that never comes. 5 years of preparation later, his knowledge is obsolete and opportunities now require a different skill set. He tells himself he followed prudence. He avoided risk, but he also avoided being tested. The loop saved his self-image and cost him the market. Scene 3. A promotion would mean delegating some work. She resists because no one can do it like I can. She stays on call. She becomes indispensable and exhausted. The company rewards loyalty by asking for more. She earns more money in less time. The reward is a trap. Her identity was affirmed. She is essential. The loop 1. Notice the common thread across scenes. The mind's first priority is to protect identity, not to maximize opportunity. Identity protection uses plausible rationales. Prudence, responsibility, perfectionism, these words are shields. Behind them sits fear. There is also a social layer that lubricates the loop. When you behave in these protective ways, others adjust. They learn you will perform like this. Tasks migrate toward you. So your sacrifice produces more reasons to sacrifice. The system self-perpetuates. Your environment begins to expect your compliance. This is why personal change can be uncomfortable. It threatens a whole economy of relationships. Now observe how the loop escalates. Each time you refuse expansion, your sense of possibility shrinks a little. The brain economizes. Why risk if the old pattern secured identity? Over time, the threshold for risk rises. Opportunities that once looked possible now seem unattainable. The field of available futures narrows. This narrowing shows up in money management too. People in the loop budget for scarcity. They optimize survival. They do not design for growth. When an extra arrives, it is channeled into duty. The mind reads this as moral action, but the real effect is a freeze. Wealth that could have produced leverage is converted back into obligations. The loop locks the financial trajectory into linear struggle rather than compounding advantage. The auto-sabotage loop also runs invisibly in relationships. People who identify as indispensable do not allow vulnerability. They equate rest with failure. Their partners get resentful. Children get logistical presence without emotional presence. Bonds erode. When crisis arrives, the person in the loop blames external causes while their internal script remains untouched. The loop has cost them intimacy. Now some of you will object. Sometimes refusing is right. Sometimes the risk is dumb. True. The loop does not preclude legitimate prudence. The difference is motive and pattern. Prudence aims at clear criteria and limits. The loop uses prudence as camouflage to avoid growth repeatedly. Pattern distinguishes wisdom from avoidance. How do you break it? The short answer is, intervene early in the loop. Interrupt the identity thought before it becomes justification. Use experiments that privilege evidence over narrative. Launch partial bets with defined endpoints. Price on value, not fear. Make failure small and visible. Each small recovery rewires the narrative from "I can't" to "I can recover." Evidence erodes the old identity. I will give you a procedural nudge. When an opportunity appears, ask 3 crisp questions before your emotional brain answers. 1. What is the smallest action that would test this opportunity in reality? 2. What is the worst realistic outcome and how would I recover from it? 3. What does success look like in 90 days? If you cannot answer these quickly, your loop is active. The questions force the mind into an empirical mode. They shrink the catastrophe imagined by identity protection. Practice them and you will see the loop stall. A cautionary final note. Disruption is social as well as internal. When you begin to act differently, expect resistance. Your network has learned to benefit from the old you. They will nudge you back. Name that friction. Keep a small set of allies who will reflect the new intent. The loop fights to survive. Next, I will show what happens if the loop runs unbroken for decades. I will describe the point of collapse, the exact moment the system becomes unsustainable, and how it forces a decision between continuing downward or starting real change. That moment is brutal, and it is the hinge of whether your life becomes the title of this video or an alternative version. I will show the anatomy of that break. The accumulation is stealthy. It feels like ordinary life. Bills, meetings, dinners, requests. But every day the clock takes a fractional toll. Muscles tighten, sleep frays, conversations thin. The body keeps a ledger and eventually demands to be read. That readout is the point of break. I have seen 3 classic shapes of collapse. First, the health shock. Someone collapses at work. Tests reveal an organ under siege. Suddenly the long argument that sacrifice was noble looks like negligence. Second, the relationship rupture. A partner leaves or says, "I don't know you anymore." Children grow into adults who remember logistics, not presence. Third, the financial sting. A market shift or the loss of a steady job exposes the person who always relied on capacity rather than strategy. Years of labor suddenly cannot buy what was deferred. At the collapse, the mind behaves predictably. There is blame, bargaining, self-justification. Many retreat into old scripts louder than ever. I did what I needed to do. That line sounds noble. It hides the simple fact that the identity that produced the sacrifices also produced the collapse. Facing that truth is painful. Collapse forces a bifurcation. You can stay in the pattern and deepen the harm. Or you can treat the collapse as information, a diagnostic, and begin to reprogram. Neither choice is easy. Staying feels like default survival. Changing looks like risk dressed in humility. Both require courage. I remember a man, call him Roberto, who built his life on showing up for everyone. He never missed an overtime. He financed a daughter's education. He fixed others' cars. Then at 54 he had a heart attack. Lying in a hospital bed, he insisted to anyone who would listen that he had been honorable. Weeks later, he could no longer stand for an hour without pain. The hospital bill was large. The business he ran flatlined because his absence exposed brittle systems. Roberto could either accept the identity that had done him in or rewrite it. He chose the latter, awkwardly, with rage and shame and incremental experiments. He hired a manager. He said no to a family request for money for the first time. His children complained. His sister called him selfish. The social cost was real. But over 3 years his health stabilized. His company regained footing. His relationships' tone changed. That was not redemption so much as reconfiguration. Then there is the quieter collapse. The person wakes one morning and recognizes 2 things. They are older, and they have not lived. Retirement is a thin hope because the body and the years are not negotiable. That dawning can be crushing in ways a physical collapse is not. It strips illusion slowly, but with equal force. People in this collapse often tell me they feel tricked, as if the future promised by their younger self was a lie. Fourth, reframe generosity as strategy. Many people in the collapse sacrifice themselves because they equated duty with morality. That logic is brittle. There is generosity that destroys the giver and generosity that sustains both parties. Start choosing the latter. That might mean saying no to a request and offering a different form of help. It might mean aligning resources to create long-term capacity rather than short-term relief. Fifth, accept the paradox. You will feel guilty. Guilt is normal. It is part of the identity shedding. Say to yourself, I am allowed to prioritize my health and my future. Repeat it until the sentence stops sounding foreign. That is the first new broadcast. Let me be concrete. If you have a chronic overtime habit, make 1 week per month completely no work. Announce it. Protect it. If you fear investing, set aside 5% of every windfall into an automated vehicle you cannot touch for 6 months. If you avoid delegation, choose one recurring task and force it out of your hands for 90 days. These are not cures. They are experiments that produce evidence. Evidence is the only antidote to the identity loop. There will be setbacks. You will slip back into old habits when the social pressure peaks. You will rationalize. That happens. The difference between collapse and recovery is the willingness to resume the experiment. The person who uses collapse as permanent victimhood will likely repeat the script. The person who treats collapse as data will iterate and improve. A critical dimension at the break is emotion regulation. People in the loop tend to be reactive. They rely on output to stave off inner insecurity. Reprogramming requires learning to sit with discomfort without acting it into patterns that confirm the old identity. Meditation helps some. Practical breathing helps others. The technique is secondary to consistency. The skill is to feel and not immediately fix the feeling by reenacting old sacrifices. There is also practical repair. If finances are depleted, rewrite the money architecture. Freeze discretionary transfers. Build a 3-month buffer. Consult an advisor who understands how identity and money interact. Do not let shame keep you from getting help. Shame is both evidence of the old story and a barrier to repair. Finally, recognize the social truth. Some people will not like the new you. That is a feature, not a bug. Old dependencies are comfortable. The people who benefited from your sacrifice will resist. They may accuse you of selfishness. Stand firm. Recalibration threatens relationships because it redistributes power. Decide which relationships to repair and which to renegotiate. At the hinge, you will also find a strange mercy. The collapse that breaks the old loop opens a narrow space for new language. The sentence you once whispered can be replaced. Say it now. I am someone who deserves prosperity and balance. It will feel false. That is okay. Language often precedes feeling. Back the sentence with an act. Book a medical appointment. Block Sunday. Delegate one task. Transfer 5% to a future fund. Repeat the sentence and the act together. The law will begin to listen to the new frequency. In the next section, I will lay out the first discipline practice to accelerate that listening. A ritual that requires 3 minutes, 3 times a day, and that rewires attention from automatic sacrifice to deliberate contribution. If you have reached your breaking point, this is where to begin. If you haven't yet broken, this is where to inoculate yourself. The practice is simple and stubborn. I will teach it next. I will be blunt. Reprogramming is not a pep talk. It is a practical assault on an identity that has been running your life on autopilot. The sentence you have been rehearsing for decades, I am someone who must earn my worth, is the software. We will override it with a new operating system. That will require small, stubborn moves. Not drama. Not theatrics. Repetition. First, the identity line you must practice is simple and exact. I am not my work. I deserve prosperity with balance. Say it until it stops sounding like a wish. Then act in ways that force your nervous system to accept the statement as fact. Identity changes only when behavior produces incontrovertible data. You do not think your way there. You proof your way there. This is not spiritual fluff. It is engineering. I call the practice the 3 times protocol. 3 minutes, 3 times a day. Stop what you are doing. Breathe 3 full breaths. Then ask yourself 3 direct questions and answer aloud, plainly. What small action would test this opportunity in reality? What is the worst realistic outcome, and how would I recover? What would success look like in 90 days? If you cannot answer quickly, your automatic identity is in charge. If you can answer quickly, you have created a crack where a different pattern can enter. Let me walk you through exactly how to run the protocol. Morning. After waking, before the accretion of busyness, stop for 3 minutes. Breathe. Ask the 3 questions. Write 1 action and schedule it immediately on your calendar. Noon. During a natural pause lunch, a bathroom break, stop again. Breathe. Check your morning action. Did you schedule it? If not, make a commitment now. Evening. Before sleep, stop once more. Breathe. Note evidence. What small recovery happened today? What felt different? Repeat this for 90 days. Concrete examples make this less abstract. Roberto, the man I mentioned earlier, began by blocking 1 full day per month as no work. He announced it plainly, not negotiable. At first his children complained. His sister called it selfish. The manager he eventually hired complained that he was absent. Roberto kept the day. At first he spent it badly scrolling, worrying. But by month 3 he used a no-work day to do light exercise, a medical check, and a long conversation with his eldest. He returned to work less reactive. His pain decreased. His doctor reduced his medication. The day off became evidence that he could recover. The ritual had created a protected data point against the old script. Another example. Maria was a consultant who always underpriced. Her identity said, "I am lucky to have any client." Her first experiment was pricing a single product on value rather than time. She used the 3 questions to structure it. The smallest test? Offer a higher-priced package to 1 existing client for a pilot. Worst outcome? Client says no. Recovery? Refund or a discounted phase. Success in 90 days? Clear demand and a repeatable offer. She did it. The client said yes. Maria discovered she did not lose clients when she charged value. She gained confidence and a template. That single experiment rewired her claims about money. The ritual will not fix your bank account overnight. It will, however, give your mind repeated, low-risk experiences that contradict the old story. That is the mechanism of change. The mind trusts evidence. It will update slowly when you feed it consistent data. You also must redesign the environment. Identity does not change in isolation. Your family, colleagues, and financial systems have learned to expect your compliance. They will resist. That resistance is predictable. It is part of the cost. Do not be surprised when friends call you selfish or when your boss escalates requests the first week you stop answering after hours. That escalation is a test. It asks, will you revert? Plan for it. Tell 2 allies what you are doing. Ask 1 person to hold you accountable to the 3-minute practice and the monthly no-work day. Hire a trusted person to handle 1 recurring task for 90 days. Name the task now and remove it from your hands. Money needs structural intervention, not virtue. Automate the change. I ask people to commit a tiny percentage of windfalls to a locked vehicle. 5% of any bonus, gift, or unexpected income should move automatically into a separate account or investment that is not for day-to-day spending. Small, locked transfers produce 2 things. They reduce the temptation to convert every gain into duty, and they create a habit of allocating resources to future capacity rather than present obligation. Practice delegation precisely. Choose 1 recurring task you perform at least once a week. It may be invoicing, scheduling, grocery procurement, or managing a household vendor. Delegate it for 90 days. Make the handoff complete. Create a checklist. Set expectations and limits. Then remove yourself. You will feel naked. So will your nervous system. Expect guilt. Expect someone to complain about how it's always been. Keep the border. Track the time you save. If you are sleeping better and still earning, you are learning the new law. If you are less stressed and your revenue is stable or improving, the hypothesis is supported. Expect setbacks. The old identity will not vanish kindly. It will send a wave of guilt, then a data crisis. You might take a step backward after a family emergency or a cash gap. That is not failure. It is part of the process. What distinguishes the new pattern from the old is how you respond to relapse. Repeat the experiment. Recommit. Collect evidence. Accountability structures speed this reprogramming. Create a public but limited commitment. Tell a friend, your partner, or a small group that you will stop answering emails after 7 p.m. for 90 days. Put it in your calendar. Share weekly updates with the person who agreed to hold you. Small public acts reduce the psychological cost of changing private behavior. Finally, manage the narrative. Your mind will invent a story to save face. It will make sense of small failures by blaming circumstances. Do not let it. Practice the forensic habit. After any setback, write the timeline. What happened in facts? When did you deviate? What triggered it? Who asked for what? How did you react? Keep the narrative free of moralizing language. Numbers, dates, events. This turns emotion into reparable data. Reprogramming is stubbornly simple. Produce small, undeniable evidence that contradicts the old identity. The 3 times protocol, a locked saving habit, a delegated recurring task for 90 days, and 1 non-negotiable recovery day per month create that evidence. They are not glamorous. They are not fast. But they are effective. If you do the work, your environment will shift. Your thinking will follow. You will feel cost. Your network will push back. People who benefited from the old you will resist. That resistance can be painful. Expect loss. Expect arguments. Expect to be called selfish. That is normal. It is the price of redistributing capacity. Decide who you will be accountable to and prepare for the social consequences. Next, we will imagine the life that begins to appear when the ritual is practiced and the small experiments are kept. I will show concrete scenes, negotiating a rate increase with a client and getting it, accepting a windfall and using it to build leverage instead of obligations, repairing a relationship by being present. You will see the timeline: 3 months, 1 year, 3 years. The changes are not mystical. They are cumulative. They are also precarious. In the next section, you will meet the future that proves the method and the moments when the old pattern still tries to drag you back. I will show you both the promise and the friction you must handle. Change does not arrive as a single flood. It starts as a trickle of different choices that, over time, rearrange a life. Imagine 90 days in which you practice the 3 times protocol. Keep 1 no-work day per month. Transfer 5% of every windfall into a locked vehicle and delegate a recurring task for 3 months. What happens on day 91? Not magic. A new set of visible realities. First, your calendar begins to look different. You will notice blocks of time you did not have before. That is not because you became less busy. It is because others stopped assuming you would do everything. When you stop answering late-night requests, people come to your scheduled slots. Boundaries force the world to adapt. You will be surprised by how quickly that adaptation happens. The social economy accepts any stable signal. Stop being always available, and the system learns. Second, your pricing and negotiation behavior change. When you practice evidence-based experiments, you gather data that supports higher value. That is what happened to Maria. In month 2, she approached 3 clients and offered a signal-priced package set at 30% more than she had charged before. She did not justify it with self-abasing explanations. She presented a value proposition in a short pilot period. 2 clients accepted. 1 declined. The ones who accepted were a better fit. Maria's revenue rose, and so did her sense of dignity. Price is a social signal. When you change what you accept, you change who shows up. Third, passive and semi-passive income starts to look possible, not because of wishful thinking, but because you have cognitive room to see what matters. The person who is exhausted cannot design leverage. The person who has one no-work day per month and 3 minutes of ritual 3 times a day can see where small systems will compound. That might be a digital product, a template sold to clients, or a licensing arrangement. I have seen clients convert a standard custom proposal into a packaged offering that's sold repeatedly, freeing them from trading hours for money. Fourth, health response. This is not airy talk. Chronic stress shortens attention, damages sleep, and increases inflammatory load. The people who begin to stop and breathe 3 times a day, who schedule recovery and keep it, will sleep better within weeks. Their clinicians will note meaningful changes in blood pressure and metabolic markers in months. Roberto, after 3 months of a protected day and a delegated manager for operations, went from weekly chest tightness to months without it. He started walking daily. That is a physiological outcome of a psychological experiment. Fifth, relationships change tone. Presence is not a slogan. It is an action. If you designate time where you are fully present, your partner and children notice. They respond. You will not repair decades in a month. You will, however, create a different emotional ledger. Small acts of presence compound into trust. That trust allows intimate conversations that were previously avoided. People do not need you to be constantly available. They need you to be reliably present. But change produces friction. The first month friction is the loudest. People who relied on your sacrifice now feel destabilized. Your partner might accuse you of changing priorities. Your sibling might beg. Your boss might triple the requests to test your limits. Expect a backlash. Expect old patterns to be weaponized against you. The test is designed to measure whether the new identity is durable or cosmetic. When the test comes, your practice must hold. Economically, the first year is about leveling and optimizing. Expect some immediate relief as you keep windfalls. Expect a lag in obvious new streams of income. Expect opportunities to present themselves that previously were invisible. If you have been on an overtime treadmill, the first 3 months will feel like you are losing momentum. That is the mind arguing. Momentum built on overwork is brittle. Momentum built on strategy is slower to accelerate but steadier. Consider the timeline. Month 0 to 3, experiments, friction, and first signs of recovery. Month 3 to 12, habits become less novel and more automatic. Patterns of delegation and boundary setting are integrated. Small investments seed leverage. You begin to see the first returns on your locked transfers and packaged offers. Years 1 to 3, compounding. Small investments in systems and relationships begin to pay visible dividends. Clients who respect value become steady. Your energy reserve grows. Now the counterfactual. What does not change by merely trying? Your market will not magically become kinder. Structural shocks can hit. But the person who has capacity responds. The person who is always working collapses. That is the difference. The future alternative is not an escape from hardship. It is the creation of reserve. Let me be more concrete about what will appear when the new pattern takes root. You will find yourself in a negotiation and feel calm. You will price on value rather than fear. You will feel the windfall and, before committing, watch an automatic transfer allocate 5% to future capacity. You will delegate and notice it takes less than you feared. You will take a Sunday without work and wake up more creative on Monday. Small recovery begets better decisions. Here is a scene. A client calls on Friday at 6 p.m., asking for an urgent revision. The old you would comply and cancel plans. The new pattern prompts you to breathe twice. Text a reply that you will handle it during business hours, and schedule a 30-minute slot for Monday. The client accepts. Nothing crumbles. In fact, the client learns and calibrates. That small act teaches your ecosystem not to expect immediate reaction. Over weeks, your schedule fills with deliberate work and your evenings return. Another scene. A relative asks for emergency cash. The old you says yes and absorbs stress. The new you listens, expresses concern, and offers a measured alternative, a small loan, or assistance contact. Keep the rituals, keep the metrics, keep the delegated systems running. I want you to picture 1 year from now. You have 3 no-work days blocked in your calendar. You made 3 small experiments that succeeded. You automated 5% of every windfall. You have 1 recurring task that is fully delegated. Your sleep quality is measurably better. Your revenue is equal or better. Your relationships are warmer. Does this sound like a miracle? No. It is a collection of small, stubborn choices. Still, you must be honest. The future you imagine will also require you to tolerate social cost. People will push. There will be nights when you want to revert. The difference is that now you will ask the engineers questions. What is the smallest test? What is the realistic worst outcome? What is success in 90 days? These questions convert anxiety into experiments. That choice will save you from the slow death of accumulated sacrifice. In the next and final part 1, we'll close the loop. I will give you the mirror and the immediate micro step you must take today. I will frame 3 sentences you can begin to say aloud and 3 tiny acts you can perform this hour. The rest is precision. You will have to choose. The moment you choose, the universe will begin to reorganize around the new frequency. We started with a hard truth. A voice inside you can declare identity and the world will respond. We have tracked the loop: identity thought, emotional activation, meaning-making, defensive action, outcome, retrospective evidence. We have practiced an alternative, a new identity statement, a simple ritual, 90-day experiments, structural money moves, and delegation. Now the practical closure. Where are you, and what will you do in the next 24 hours? First, look in the mirror and answer honestly. Do you recognize the hurrier of burden, the busy martyr, the abundance rejecter, or the eternal planner in your life? You may see pieces of more than one. That is normal. This is not about shame. It is about specification. The more precise you are, the better your repair work will be. Second, a micro step you can do right now. Not next week. Now, pick 1 decision you have postponed under the pretext of no time. It can be a medical appointment, a conversation, a delegated task, or 1 hour of genuine rest. Do not plan it. Commit to it. Put it in your calendar for today or tomorrow. Block it. Tell 1 ally you will do it. If you do nothing else, do this. This single act is a redeclaration of identity. It will feel insignificant and seismic at the same time. Third, the 3 sentences you must begin to repeat until they stop sounding foreign. Say them out loud and pair each with an action. I am allowed to prioritize my health and my future. Action. Schedule a medical or dental appointment within 7 days. I deserve prosperity without self-destruction. Action. Set an automatic transfer that moves 5% of any windfall into a locked account. I can recover from failure and learn. Action. Pick 1 90-day delegation and announce it. Do not minimize the friction. You will feel guilt. Your inner critic will accuse you of betrayal. That voice is the old identity accusing you of infidelity. When that happens, perform the protocol. Stop. Breathe. Ask the 3 engineers questions. If the answer is avoidance, proceed with the experiment anyway. If the answer is sensible risk management, adjust. What matters is the data you generate. You also need accountability. Pick 2 people to tell what you are changing and why. One of them should mirror your new intention rather than calibrate you back to the old norm. The other can be a practical partner who ensures you keep the scheduling and money actions. Make these commitments public in a constrained way. A private promise is easy to avoid. A small public notice and honest message to 2 people creates a tether. If you have financial fragility, take immediate practical steps. Freeze discretionary transfers. Build a 3-month buffer if possible. If you are ashamed, hire someone who can help without moral judgment. Shame is a tool the old identity uses to keep you paralyzed. Do not let it win. There will be social losses when you change. Expect to be called selfish. Expect to lose some favors. Expect some relationships to require renegotiation. That is truth. But also expect to gain quiet companions who respect your boundaries. People who flourish around someone who cares for themselves tend to be steadier allies. And a practical cadence. Use the 3 times protocol for 90 days and log 3 numbers weekly hours spent on billable or mission-critical work, discretionary spending, and 1 recovery metric such as hours of sleep or quality of conversations with a loved one. After 90 days, review the data. If you improve 2 out of 3 metrics, keep what you're doing and scale gradually. If not, tighten the experiment. The method is iterative, not theatrical. You will hear 1,000 reasons to postpone. 1 week will become 1 year. That is the loop you know well. Break it with a tiny, unavoidable act. I will not romanticize this. The work is quiet and stubborn. It is showing up when you feel the old voice pull and doing the small thing anyway. It is waking on Monday and repeating the ritual. If you have read this far, you probably know this pattern intimately. You may have tried small changes before. That is fine. The difference now is applying the engineer's questions and keeping the structure for 90 days. Structure makes identity credible. Evidence rewires the mind. Before I close, a brief human request. If this struck a chord, share 1 sentence in the comments about which act you will do today and the city you are in. Tell someone close to you what you plan. And if you want to follow the next pieces I will make, subscribe so you can see how to handle the deeper social work and financial rebuild that often follows this first phase. I want to leave you with a final image. Imagine yourself at 80, looking back. Do you want to say you were busy and exhausted until the end? Or that you learned to manage your life so that work was a contribution, not a sentence? The answer is not decided by fate. It is decided by small acts. Choose one now. Which life will you build? The one your identity has been forcing on you, or the one you can create with deliberate experiments, honest accounting, and small acts of repair? The next minute is yours to decide.